Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
Trust we are
Good
doing
evening,
great.
sir. Fine, sir.
Welcome. Trust you've been good too.
Exactly like a month to exam, we should be rounding up on this class. Of course, this class we round up with variance analysis. Tonight, we shall be taking simple variance analysis. With this topic, you might need to monitor the pattern of the formula being used. What we are looking at tonight involves a great amount of formula, but this formula has a pattern that makes it easier to learn. We shall be looking at what is variance, cost variance, sales variances, and reconciliation statement, profit reconciliation using variance analysis. Assuming you are asked, what is variance? If you are asked to define variance, what will come to our mind? Examiner says, define the terms variance. If you are to define variance, variance can be defined as any deviation from acceptable standard. If you are asked to define variance, variance is any deviation from acceptable level of performance or acceptable performance standard. That is the word variance. The word variance is rarely used on its own. The word variance is rarely used on its own. The word is usually qualified. You can have cost variance. Look at it, cost variance. You know, we define variance. When I say variance is rarely used on its own, something must be attached to that variance. We can now have cost variance. Cost variance is the differences between the expected cost and the actual cost. Cost variance, the differences between the expected cost or the standard cost and the actual cost incurred. Assuming I expect a product to cost 1,000. On getting to the market, I got the product for 1,500. That means there's a variance. My expectation is that the product should cost 1,000 naira. But when I get to the market, to make actual purchase, the seller says it's 1,005. That means there's a cost variance. Expected cost is different from actual cost incurred. You can have revenue variance or sales variance. Sales revenue variance, where the expected revenue is different from the actual revenue achieved. That means we have revenue variance. You can have profit variance, where the budgeted profit is different from the actual profit. We have profit variance. We have defined variance. We have explained the fact that variance is rarely used on its own. Variance is usually qualified. That means something must be attached to the word variance. We have explained cost variance. We have explained revenue variance. We have explained profit variance. Now, what is variance analysis? What is variance analysis? Variance analysis is the process by which the differences between the expected cost and the actual cost is analyzed. The process of analyzing the differences between the expected cost and the actual cost is what we call variance analysis. If you are trying to analyze the differences, if you are analyzing, you are trying to look at what are the reasons why expected cost is not the same with the actual cost. The process of investigating the differences or the causes of the differences between the expected cost and the actual cost, or between the expected revenue and the actual revenue, is what we call variance analysis. So if you are carrying out variance analysis, what you are trying to do is to be able to explain the causes of the differences between the expectation and the actual. Is that point clear, please? At every point in time, you are being asked to conduct variance analysis. What you are trying to do is to investigate why the expected is different or is not the same as the actual. That is variance analysis. Right. Your variance analysis can either give you favorable variance or adverse variance. If you carry out variance analysis, you can either have favorable variance or you can have adverse variance. Favorable variance is denoted with the letter F, while the adverse variance is denoted with capital letter A. For example, if expected cost is less than the actual cost, that means there's a favorable variance. Our expectation is to spend 1,000 naira to buy a product. On getting to the market, we bought the product for 800 naira. That means we have saved 200 naira. That is a favorable variance. But if the actual cost is more than the expected cost, that becomes adverse variance. Now we move to cost variance in details. want to look at cost variances. When we say cost variance, if you take a product, what are the components of cost? If you take a product now, what are the components of cost? Or what are the elements of cost? We have material cost. To manufacture a product, we are going to require raw material. So we have material cost. We are going to require labor. We have labor cost. We are likely to incur overhead. This overhead can be divided into variable overhead and fixed overhead. That means under our cost variances, we are going to look at direct material cost variance. We are going to look at direct material cost variance. What is direct material cost variance? This is the differences between the standard direct material cost for actual production and the actual direct material cost incurred for actual production. I will take that again. Direct material total cost variance. Direct material total cost variance. This is the differences between standard material cost for actual production achieved and actual material cost incurred for actual production. That is our direct material total cost variance. If you are required to calculate direct material total cost variance, look at the formula, please. You can write it down. It's not a crime, although the material will be shared after the class, all things being equal. Direct material total cost variance. The formula is actual production, actual units produced, that is our actual production, multiplied by standard material per unit multiplied by standard material cost. Minus open a bracket actual quantity actual production multiplied by actual material per unit, actual material per unit, multiplied by actual material cost. Actual material cost. The actual material cost may be given in kg or may be given in liter. Actual material cost. This will give you direct material total cost variance. This will give you direct material total cost variance. Now, our direct material cost variance can be subdivided into two. Direct material cost variance can be divided into two. You can divide this into, this can be subdivided, or this can be divided. Can be divided into two. You can have direct material price variance, direct material price variance. That is one. What is direct material price variance? Direct material price variance is the differences between the standard material price and the actual material price valued at standard material purchased. Direct material price variance. The differences between standard material price and the actual material price valued at actual quantity of material purchased. This is calculated as, please look at it. This is equal to.
Please, can you take that again? Sorry. The direct material price variance. The difference.
No problem. The differences between standard material price and actual material price. Standard material price and actual material price.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Valued at actual quantity purchased. Actual material purchased. If you have to calculate that, if you want to take it to mathematics, standard material price minus actual material price, let me shorten this, close your bracket, multiply by actual quantity of material purchase. Actual quantity of material purchase. Actual quantity of material purchased. So if you are facing an exam, watch out. Material can be purchased in kg. Material might be purchased in units. Material might be purchased in liters. So if the material is purchased in kg, that means you are going to look at material price per kg. Actual material price per kg. If the material is stated in liters, material purchase is in liters. That means we are going to look for standard material price per liter minus actual material price per liter. If the materials is purchased in units, that means you are going to look for standard material price per unit. So please, watch out very well in the exam. Examiner will tell you the weight of the material. Is it in kilogram, or in liter, or in grams? There must be weight attached to the material purchased. So deliberately, we are going to keep the pace of the class a bit on the average, not too fast, not too slow. Once you understand the concepts and this and the pattern of the formula, look at it now. Material price variance. It is price that will vary. Look at it. Standard price minus actual price. It is the price that varies. Material price variance. Quantity is the same. Material price variance. So our direct material total cost variance can be divided into material price variance, that's number one, or you can say number two. Number two is direct material usage variance. Direct material usage variance. Our direct material usage variance is the differences between our direct material usage variance is the differences between standard material required for actual production. Standard material required for actual production and actual material used for actual production. Value at standard material cost. I will take that again. Direct material usage variance. Differences between standard material required for actual production minus actual material used for actual production. valued at standard material cost. The formula for this is excuse me. The formula for this is standard, please, if you see STD, standard material okay, let me do it this way. If you have to calculate this, you start with actual production multiplied by standard material multiplied by standard material per unit. No, don't put this. Okay. You might put it here. Might put it, okay. Let me put it. Minus actual material use. Actual material used. Actual material used. Differences between these two. Then when you get your answer, multiply by standard material cost. So you are going to get standard material required for actual production minus actual material used for actual production multiplied by the standard material cost per, it could be per liter, it could be per kg, it could be per unit, depending on the weight of the material. This is how to calculate your direct material usage variance. The addition of direct material price variance and direct material usage variance will give us direct material total cost variance.
Hello, sorry, sir.
Yes.
You wrote standard material cost per what, sir?
You know, I said it. It could be per kg, depending on the type of material you are giving. The material can be stated in kg. Okay. It could be per kg. But if the material is in liter, that becomes per liter. Is that clear, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank God we are back.
Hello, sir. We cannot hear you. Hello, sir. Can anybody hear him?
I can't hear him.
Mr. Shiwaju, we cannot hear.
No, we cannot hear him.
Can the class hear me now?
Yes, sir.
We can hear you now, sir.
All right, we're discussing direct labor total cost variance. Direct labor total cost variance is the differences between standard labor cost of actual production and actual labor cost incurred for actual production. Look at it here, please. Direct labor total cost variance. Differences between standard labor cost of actual production and actual labor cost of actual production, calculated as actual unit produced multiplied by standard hours per unit multiplied by standard rate per unit minus actual unit produced multiplied by actual hours per unit multiplied by actual rates per unit. That is direct labor total cost variance. The formula is actual unit produced multiplied by standard hours per unit multiplied by standard rate per hour minus actual unit produced multiplied by multiplied by actual hour per unit actual hour per unit multiplied by actual rates per hour. This will give you your direct labor total cost variance. Our direct labor total cost variance can also be divided into two. This can be divided into two. This can be divided into 2. One, we have direct labor rate variance. Direct labor rates variance. Direct labor rate variance is the differences between standard rates, standard labor rates per hour, and actual labor rates per hour. Differences between standard labor rates per hour and actual labor rate per hour, valued at actual hours paid for. Valued at actual hours paid for. If you are to take this to mathematics, right? This becomes standard hour, standard rates per hour. Standard rate per hour minus actual rates per hour. Actual rates per hour. Rates per hour. Close my bracket. Multiply by actual labor hours paid. Actual labor hours paid. This will give you your direct labor rate variance. Differences between the standard labor rates and actual labor rates valued at actual labor hours paid. Then number figure 2. Direct labor efficiency variance. Direct labor efficiency. Efficiency variance. Please, a small digression. Please, as much as possible, try to pass your exam. As much as possible is diet. Try to pass this your exam. Next diet, there might be change in ICANN syllabus. They might introduce some new subjects. Some new subject might be introduced to these skill levels. All right. Direct labor efficiency variance. This is the differences between the standard hours required for production and the actual hours used for production. Differences between the standard labor hours required for production, required for actual production, and actual labor hours worked, actual labor hours used for production, valued at standard rates per hour. Valued at standard rates per hour. I will define it again. Direct labor efficiency variance is the differences between standard labor hours required for actual production and actual labor hours used for production. Valued at standard rates per hour. If you want to take it to mathematics, this is equal to standard hours required for actual production. For actual production minus actual hours used multiplied by standard rates per hour. So you are going to take actual production first, multiply by the standard hours. That will give you standard hours required for actual production, minus the actual hours used for production. Multiply by the standard rate per hour. That is the efficiency variance. We have treated material cost variances, labor cost variances. We now move to number 3. Variable overhead, total cost variance. Variable overhead, total cost variance. Excuse me, please. Where is my customer? Variable overhead total cost variance is the differences between the standard variable overhead cost for actual production, differences between the standard variable overhead cost for actual production and the actual variable overhead cost incurred. Variable overhead total cost variance. Differences between standard variable overhead costs for actual production and actual variable overhead cost incurred. This can be calculated as Yusuf, why are you touching the screen?
Sorry, sir.
Number 3. Variable overhead total cost variance is calculated as actual units produced multiplied by standard hours per unit, standard hours per unit, multiplied by standard overhead, standard variable overhead absorption rates. Please, OAR, overhead absorption rate. That is the standard variable overhead absorption rate. Close my bracket, minus actual variable overhead incurred, minus actual variable overhead cost incurred. This will give you variable overhead total cost variance. This variance can be divided into two. This variance can be divided into two. This can be divided into two. We have one variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead expenditure variance. That's one. Let us explain that first. Variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead expenditure variance is the differences between absorbed variable overhead and incurred variable overhead. I will take that again. Variable overhead expenditure variance is the differences between absorbed variable overhead and actual variable overhead incurred. Absorbed overhead minus incurred overhead. If you want to calculate this, now, it becomes actual units produced they use actual hour. Actual hours multiplied by standard variable overhead absorption rates minus actual variable overhead incurred. Actual variable overhead incurred. That will give you your variable overhead expenditure variance. Differences between variable overhead absorbed and actual variable overhead incurred. That is your variable overhead expenditure variance. Then Number 2, you have variable overhead efficiency variance. Variable overhead efficiency. Efficiency variance. Of course, the examiner will not ask you to say what is that is very rare. But we need to explain it. You need to know it. Variable overhead efficiency variance is the differences between variable overhead allowed and variable overhead absorbed. Differences between variable overhead cost allowed and variable overhead cost incurred. Sorry, and variable overhead cost absorbed. Variable overhead efficiency variance is the differences between the variable overhead cost allowed and the variable overhead cost absorbed. If you are to take it to mathematics now, you want to convert it to calculation. It becomes standard hours required for actual production minus actual hours used, close your brackets, then multiply by standard variable overhead absorption rate, OAR, overhead absorption rate. So you have variable overhead absorption rate. Examiner will give you in the exam. This will give you your variable overhead efficiency variance. Then we now have fixed. Number 4. Fixed overhead. Fixed overhead total cost variance. Fixed overhead total cost variance. If you are to define this, fixed overhead total cost variance is the differences between standard fixed overhead cost for actual production, differences between standard fixed overhead cost for actual production and actual fixed overhead cost incurred. That's our fixed overhead total cost variance. Differences between the standard fixed overhead cost for actual production and actual fixed overhead cost incurred. This can also be divided into two. Let's go back to the whiteboard. You can calculate this as actual unit produced, actual unit produced at standard hours multiplied by standard fixed overhead absorption rate per hour. Minus actual fixed overhead costs incurred view your fixed overhead total cost variance. This can be subdivided into two. This variance can be divided into two. One, we have fixed overhead expenditure variance. Fixed overhead expenditure variance Let's define this. Fixed overhead expenditure variance is the differences between budgeted fixed overhead cost and actual fixed overhead cost. Differences between, look at it, budgeted fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. This is how to calculate your fixed overhead expenditure variance. Then number 2, we have fixed overhead volume variance. Fixed overhead volume variance. Volume variance. This is the differences between actual unit produced and budgeted unit of production. Actual unit produced and budgeted unit of production valued at standard fixed overhead cost per unit. Valued at standard fixed overhead cost per unit. If you have to calculate this, this is equal to actual production minus budgeted production actual production units, then multiply by standard fixed overhead costs. Overhead costs per unit. These are the cost variances. These are the cost variances. Any question, please? Any question, please? All right. Now, please, I want you to take note of this. Take note of this important information. If in the exam, examiner says the company uses marginal costing system. If the examiner says the company uses marginal costing system, that means if you are calculating variances, you are not going to bother about fixed overhead cost variances, because the company in question uses marginal costing. Under marginal costing, product costs are taken to be only variable costs. So if you are calculating variance, you are going to stop after you are done with your variable overhead variances. So if the examiner says the company in question uses marginal costing system, that means we can calculate material price variance, we can calculate labor cost variance, we can calculate variable overhead cost variance. Examiner will not give us fixed cost because the company uses marginal costing system. But if the examiner says the company uses absorption costing system, that means we are going to consider all the cost variances, including the fixed overhead. Oh, all right. We now move to state variance. Okay. Sales variances. Two reasons can cause sales variances. One is price and the other is volume. There are two things that can cause sales variances. One is the price, the selling price. The second is volume of sales. There are two things that could cause sales variances: price and volume. I want to check something here. Okay, it's there. So if you are reading this, sales price variance. We have one, sales price variance. This is the differences between actual selling price and standard selling price. differences between actual selling price and standard quantity sold, calculated as actual price minus standard price multiplied by actual quantity sold. This is your sales price variance. And lastly, sales volume variance. Differences between actual quantity sold and budgeted quantity for sales valued at standard margin per unit or standard profit per unit or standard contribution per unit. I will take that again. Sales volume variance. Differences between actual quantity sold and budgeted quantity for sales valued at standard margin per unit or standard profit per unit or standard contribution per unit. The formula is actual quantity sold minus budgeted quantity. Multiply by standard margin per unit, or you can multiply by standard profit per unit. At times, please, margin and profit is the same thing. Then I can say standard margin or standard profit. Where standard margin is equal to standard selling price, standard price minus standard cost. Or let me put standard absorption cost. Standard absorption cost. But if I say standard contribution per unit, this is equal to standard selling price, standard price minus standard marginal cost. Marginal cost per unit. So please note, standard profit is the same as standard margin. So if the examiner says the company uses absorption costing will include both the variable cost and fixed cost. So you are going to calculate standard margin or standard profit. But if the examiner says the company uses marginal costing, that means you are going to calculate standard contribution, standard selling price minus standard marginal cost per unit. I hope this point is very clear. Any question, please? We are done with the explanation on simple variances. Any question, please? All right, if there's no question, we still have like 45 minutes. I've shared this working with you. You can look at the charts. I'll share the working with the charts, with the group charts. Now let's go to question. So you can always look at your phone or put on your desktop all the formula we have discussed. All right. There is no harm in checking the formula to ensure that you follow well. It's not a crime. Let us look at okay. No simple question there. Every question is just loaded. All right, let's start with question 2, no problem. Let's start with question 2. Joy, you are available tonight. You want to read?
Oversure. I think so. Sir.
All right, let's go to
Question
question 2.
Question 2. Please, Paul, your
Yes.
material this evening, so I wasn't able to print it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was having so much. Sorry, all right.
Goodland Limited produces and sells a single product. The company adopts a standard absorption costing system and absorbs
Right.
overhead on the basis of direct labor hours. Presented below are the standard cost details and selling price for a single unit of the product. We have selling price, price per unit, price per unit. So our selling price is 6,000 naira.
Please,
Our
just 1
direct
minute, man. Just 1 minute. You notice that the first table you are giving, that is the standard table. Standard selling price 6,000 naira. All right, go ahead, please.
Okay. The direct materials, 30 liters at 90 naira, 2,700 naira. We have direct labor hours, 10 hours at 120 naira per hour, which gives us 1,200 naira. We have variable purchase overhead, 10 hours at 60 naira per hour, which gives us 600 naira. We also have the fixed production overhead, 10 hours at 30 naira, which gives us 300 naira. And our gross profit, when we take out the 6,000 naira from the 4, it gives us 1,200 naira.
All right, please, just 1 minute, please. Just 1 minute. Let me explain it. You have direct material, standard direct material, 30 liters. That means to produce 1 unit, we require 30 liters of material. And at a rate of 90 naira per liter, if you multiply 30 liters at 90 naira, that will give you 2,700. That 2,700 is material cost per unit. That 90 naira is material cost per liter. So please, be able to differentiate between material cost per unit and material cost per liter. Next, direct labor, 10 hours. It means that to produce 1 unit, we require 10 hours of labor. And the rate per hour, labor rate per hour is 120. If you multiply 10 by 120, that will give you 1,200. That 1,200 is labor cost per unit. So please note, 120 is labor rate, labor cost per hour. 1,200 is labor cost per unit. Examiner will give you all this. You must know which one to pick. Am I going to pick hours? You are going to pick hours if you are dealing in hours. You are going to pick unit cost if you are dealing in unit cost, units. Now next, that should be variable production, not variable purchase. It's an error. This is variable production, not variable purchase. Variable production. Examiner say variable production overhead. It requires 10 hours at 60 naira per hour. Now, that 60 naira means variable overhead rate per hour is 60. To produce 1 unit, we require 10 hours. Why the variable overhead rate per hour is 60 naira? but the variable overhead cost per unit becomes 600 naira. You multiply 10 hours by 60. Then lastly, we have fixed overhead. It requires 10 hours. Rate per hour. That 30 naira is the fixed overhead rate per hour. The 300 naira is the fixed overhead cost per unit. Now, if you sum 2007 plus 21 plus 12 plus 600 plus 300, that will give you 4,800. That 4,800 is the standard cost per unit. Our cost will include material cost, labor cost, variable overhead cost, fixed overhead cost. So the standard cost per unit is 4,800. If you now look at it, selling price, standard selling price minus standard cost. This cost is absorption cost because we added both variable and fixed cost to get 4,800. That means this cost is absorption cost. 6,000 naira minus 4,800. That will give us standard profit per unit. So the information in this schedule is about standard. All right. Sorry, I just need to explain this so that when we are solving, all right, you can go ahead with your reading, please.
Okay. It has been estimated that the productions and sales of the month would be 2,000 units. However, the estimated production for the month has been used as a basis for determining the fixed overhead absorption rate. The actual results for the month are as follows. Production in units, 2,800. I should hold on.
Okay. No, I want to take it up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The production in units 2,800, sales in units 2,400, selling price 6,120 naira, direct material 88,000 liters at 120 naira per unit, I would assume. Direct labor 21,000 hours at 150 naira per unit. Variable
let me extend
production.
this. Is there anything hiding here?
Oh, per liter and per hour. Variable production 660,000 naira. Fixed production overhead 360,000 naira. Required, prepare a statement that reconciles the budgeted gross profit with the actual gross profit for the month with a detailed computation of all the variances involved.
All right, thank you. Examiner says we should prepare a statement that reconciles the budgeted gross profit with the actual gross profit for the month with a detailed computation of all the variances involved. Now, if you look at this question, we are to reconcile two parties: budgeted profits and actual profits. For you to reconcile two parties, you must know the two parties you want to reconcile. For me to be able to reconcile these two parties, it makes sense for me to know the two parties I need to reconcile. So our first calculation is to calculate budgeted total profit. Then we calculate actual total profit. We can now reconcile the two parties using variance analysis. Let's go to the whiteboard. Please, as much as possible, pay attention. We have to reconcile budgeted profits and actual profits. Please confirm you can see my new whiteboard. The class is silent.
Yes, sir, I can see your whiteboard, sir.
All right, our first working. Working number 1. We are going to calculate budgeted total profits. To calculate this is equal to budgeted units multiplied by budgeted profit per unit. Budgeted profit per unit. If you go back to the question without wasting time, look at this paragraph. It has been estimated that the production and sales for the month will be 2,000 units. That's our budgeted units. Gross profit budgeted 1,200. I can come here. Budgeted units 2,000 units. That is what the company planned to sell. Multiplied by the budgeted profit per unit 1,200. Please multiply. What do we have? Our budgeted total profit is 2,400,000. You are done with working 1. We now move to working 2. Working 2. Calculation of actual total profits. No, actual total profits. Our Naira sign. Our actual total profits. Actual revenue. Actual revenue. Go back to the question. Actual quantity sold. Look at it, please. Actual results for the month as follows. Actual production 28. Sales. Actual quantity sold 2,400 units. Actual selling price per unit 6,120. We can come here. Actual revenue. Actual quantity sold 2,400 units multiplied by actual selling price 6,120. Please, can we multiply these two? That will give us the actual revenue.
14,688.
14 million. 6. Why this now? $688,000. We have 30 up. Thank you. We move to our cost. Actual cost. Material cost. Actual material cost. Let's go to it. Okay, we can also save space. We have cost up. Material. Go back to the question. Look at actual material purchase. 88,000 liters at 120 per liters. Let's compute actual material cost. In brackets, 88,000 liters is in liters. Liters at 120 per liter. Please multiply what you have.
10,560.
10,560. We move to labor. Our labor actual hours 21,000 hours at 150 naira per hours. Please multiply. 21,000 hours at the rate of 150 per hour. 3,000.
150.
150. Then pick your actual variable cost 660. Actual fixed cost 360. Variable overhead. Variable overhead actual. $660. Fixed overhead actual 360. Now sum your cost, please.
14,730.
14,730.
730.
That's our total cost of production. But how many did we produce? Look at it, please. Actual production, 2,800 units. Actual quantity sold, 2,400. Do we have closing stock?
Yes.
Yes. We produced 2,800 units. We sold 2,400 units. That means we have a closing stock. Examiner will not tell you. You are going to figure it out. That means you have closing stock of 400 units. Now come here and say less closing stock. Now come here, less closing stock. We have 400 units. This is the units. We now value the units, 400 units. Multiply by, please note, your closing stock should be valued as standard cost per unit. I will repeat that point. Please note, closing stock should be valued at standard cost. Look at the standard cost per unit, 4,800. Cost per unit include material cost, labor, standard material cost per unit, standard labor cost per unit, standard variable overhead cost per unit, standard fixed overhead cost per unit. That will give you 4,800. Now multiply 400 by 4,800. That is the value of your closing stock.
1,920.
1,920. Now less. You are now going to get a figure.
12,810.
12,810. This figure is called cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold. You can now get your profits. Revenue less cost of goods sold will give you your gross total profits. Our revenue 14,866 minus 12,810. What is it?
1,878.
1,878. This is the actual total profit. Actual total profit. We now want to reconcile. Our budgeted profit is 2,400,000. Actual profit 1,878,000. We now want to use variance to explain why actual profit is not the same as the budgeted profit. We now want to reconcile the two parties. We now move to the next calculation now. profit reconciliation. Reconciliation statements. Using variance. I have our 2 naira sign. We have our 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Problem. You start with your budgeted profits. The budgeted profit as computed in working one is 2,400. Then move to your 6 variances. 6 variances. Under the, no, 6 variances. Sales variances. Under this, we have sales price variance, sales price variance, V. What is the formula for sales price variance? Anybody? What is the formula for sales price variance? Actual selling price
minus standard selling price times actual quantity sold.
Thank you. Actual selling price minus standard selling price multiplied by actual quantity sold. We come here. Actual selling price 6,120. Stand 6,000 naira. Actual quantity sold 2,400. I can compute my price variance. Look at it, please. Actual selling price 6,120 minus standard selling price 6,000. Close the bracket. Multiply by actual quantity sold 2,400 units. Please compute your sales price variance.
288.
We have 288. You have to tell us, is it favorable or adverse? Is it positive or negative? You computed now.
Negative.
Positive.
Is it negative? Positive. Did you get negative?
It's positive.
No, sorry, it's positive.
Positive. Look at it. Your plan is to sell for 6,000 naira. Standard selling price. When you get to market, you sold for 6,120. That means you make a profit. This is favorable. You must indicate F or A. Let me explain it again. You want to go to market and sell. Your plan is that you are going to sell the product for 6,000 naira. On getting to the market, customers are willing to pay 6,200. That means you have a favorable variance. Okay. I can see a message saying it's not clear. I explained this, that for you to have a clearer picture, look at what we did here when we are solving this question. You can see that this thing is very clear here. But when you share to the phone, it's going to look tiny because the device is small. If you are to get the full screen, you are supposed to post this to your laptop or take it to your desktop. It will not be an excuse to say my laptop is not working. So that I just ignore that after I say my laptop is not working. So what do I do now? So please, if I share this thing, on my screen is full, I can see it. But if you attempt to look at it from your phone, well, I might not be able to help that situation. We are done with the sales price variance. You now move to sales volume variance. What is the formula for sales volume variance? Okay.
Am I muted? Okay, can you hear me? Actual quantity sold, rated quantity,
Okay.
standard
Actual
profit
quantity. Go ahead.
times standard profit.
Actual quantity sold 2,400 units. Budgeted quantity 2,000 units. Multiplied by the standard profit. Standard profit is 1,200. This is your sales volume variance. And this will give you positive. Our plan is to sell 2,000 units. On getting to the market, we sold 2,400 units. That means we make more sales, more volume. This is a favorable variance. Now multiply. What do you have?
480.
Please, you must indicate F or A. F is favorable, positive. A is adverse. 480 F. Is that clear, please?
Yes, sir.
If you don't indicate the sign, examiner might ignore it. Favorable means positive sign. Favorable means positive sign. All right. We are done with our sales variance. You now move to your cost variance. Cost variances. Oh, I was almost saying that this trying to throw me out. Let's continue. When you get to your cost variance, you can indicate A and F. A is for your adverse, negative variance. F is for your favorable, positive variance. You now start with direct material cost variances. Direct material cost variances. Under this, we have material price variance, material price variance. How do we calculate material price variance? Differences between standard material price and actual material price multiplied by actual quantity of material purchased. If I'm to calculate this, I'll go to the question. Look at actual material purchase, 88,000 liters. The material purchase is in liters. So I'm going to look for price in liter. Look at the standard material price per liter, 90 naira. Actual material price in liter, 120. I will now come here. Standard material price per liter, 90 naira. Minus actual material price per liter, 120. Multiply by actual material purchase, 88,000 liters. Look at it. Our plan is to buy material for 90 naira per liter. When we get to market, we bought at 120. This is a negative variance, adverse. Please multiply.
2,648.
2,640. I put it in red. I place it under A. Look at it now. Can you see it? Can we all see it, please?
Yes, sir.
Good. We now move to material usage variance. Material. Oh, the system is not allowing me to move. Oh. Let me see. To avoid